It began on a night when even the skyline of Seattle seemed tired of pretending. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Horizon Tower penthouse, the city glittered like 1,000 lies, each light a promise that had lost its meaning. Adrian Cole loosened his tie and exhaled a laugh that wasn't really a laugh at all. The dinner had been excruciating. Another family reunion, designed to remind him of everything he didn't want to inherit. Camille Hart had raised her crystal glass and smiled that perfect rehearsed smile. "To the renewal of our family's partnership," she had said, her voice honeyed with legacy. "And perhaps of old promises." Old promises. That was the polite way of saying arranged marriage, wrapped in champagne bubbles and expectations worth billions. Now, back in the solitude of his glass fortress, Adrian threw his blazer over the couch and muttered, "I should have married the stock market. At least it's honest when it crashes." From the open kitchen, a calm voice replied, "You're assuming the market cares enough to lie." James Lau, his assistant for nearly a decade, didn't even look up from the espresso machine. He'd seen every version of his boss, the visionary, the cynic, the man who built empires, and the one who no longer remembered why. Adrian poured himself a drink, the ice cracking like thunder in the quiet. "They toasted to my future like I'm a trust fund with legs, James. Not a single person asked how I was, only what I'm investing in next." "Maybe because your emotions aren't publicly traded," James said, sliding him a napkin. "Yet?" Adrian smirked, but the exhaustion behind his eyes didn't fade. For years, he had turned every relationship into a negotiation, every kindness into data. Tonight, he realized he didn't even know what sincerity looked like anymore. He sank into the armchair, staring at the city below. "You ever wonder, James, if people act differently when they think no one's watching?" James blinked. "In this job, I prefer not to wonder." Adrian leaned forward, a spark flickering behind his fatigue. "No, listen. What if I could find out? What if I could see what people do when they have power, without being told how to use it?" James set his cup down slowly. "Sir, whenever you start a sentence with 'what if,' someone ends up crying. Usually me." Adrian ignored him. The idea had already taken root. He stood and began pacing, the energy returning to his stride. "I'm surrounded by people who swear they know me, who say they care. Camille with her designer empathy. Sienna, the strategist who can monetize compassion. And Lena," he paused, frowning, "she's different." James looked up. "The young one who works for Mrs. Evelyn? She's studying psychology, I think. Polite, quiet. Probably the only person in this building who's never asked me for anything." He tapped his glass against his palm, thoughtfully. "Maybe that's exactly why I should." "Should what?" Adrian turned, the glint in his eyes, equal parts mischief and desperation. "A test. A behavioral experiment. I'll give each of them an unlimited credit card. No rules, no expectations. And just watch, observe, see who they become when money stops being a barrier." James groaned. "Sir, last time you said behavioral experiment, the finance press thought you were starting a cult. This time, it's private, no media, just me, my curiosity, and 3 very different women." He walked to the glass wall, looking down at the lights shimmering on the bay. "Camille will probably buy a yacht to match her ego. Sienna will host a seminar on how generosity can be tax-deductible, and Lena—" He hesitated. A rare softness flickered in his voice. "I don't know what she'll do. That's what makes it interesting." James folded his arms. "You're aware this sounds manipulative, right?" "I'm not judging them," Adrian said. "I'm observing. People reveal themselves when given freedom." "Or when cornered," James replied. "Depends on the lighting." Adrian ignored the remark and strode toward his desk. He pulled open a drawer, revealing a sleek black box engraved with his initials. Inside, 3 matte black credit cards gleamed under the light, the kind that had no limit and no mercy. He laid them on the desk one by one, like chess pieces on a board only he could see. One for Camille, one for Sienna, one for Lena. James watched in silence, shaking his head. "You really think you'll find honesty in spending habits?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Honesty hides in strange places, James. Sometimes in silence, sometimes in receipts." He poured another drink, then paused as if remembering something. "And there's one more thing. Grandma Evelyn. James blinked. You're giving your 82-year-old grandmother an unlimited credit card? She'll never use it for herself, Adrian said. But I want to see who she uses it for. She sees people better than I ever could. James sighed. Meaning she's about to use it on the one person who actually deserves it. Adrian met his gaze. You think so too? I think Mrs. Evelyn already ran your experiment years ago, James said, heading for the door. You're just catching up. The elevator doors slid shut behind him, leaving Adrian alone with his thoughts and the 3 cards gleaming like dark mirrors. He stared at them for a long moment, the city's reflection rippling across their surfaces. Each one represented a version of the truth he wasn't sure he was ready to face. In the glass wall ahead, his own reflection looked back, a man who had everything except the one thing he couldn't buy: trust. He took off his watch, the symbol of time managed to perfection, and placed it beside the cards. For once, he wanted to see what would happen if he stopped managing. The night outside deepened into indigo. The hum of the city softened to a distant pulse. Adrian leaned back in his chair and whispered to no one, "Let's see who they really are." A moment of silence. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "And maybe who I am too." The camera would hold on him there, alone, half in shadow, the glow of the city painting lines of gold across the glass. 3 cards lay on the desk like a riddle, and behind his calm eyes, a storm quietly began. Morning sunlight spilled across the marble floors of the Horizon Tower penthouse, cutting sharp reflections through the glass. The city below was already alive, but inside Adrian Cole's office, silence ruled, the kind that always came before one of his unpredictable decisions. 3 black envelopes rested neatly on the desk, their silver lettering catching the light. The names written on each shimmered like a challenge: Camille Hart, Dr. Sienna Blake, Lena Reyes. James entered quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "They've all confirmed their appointments," he said, setting one mug down. "Shall I schedule paramedics for the aftermath?" Adrian smiled faintly. "No, this time I'll try to keep the casualties emotional, not physical." "Good to know." James checked his tablet. "First up, Miss Hart." Adrian adjusted his tie, though he didn't know why. There was no preparing for Camille. The elevator chimed, and moments later, her perfume announced her arrival before her heels did. Camille stepped into the office like she owned both it and the view behind it, a perfect silhouette in a cream designer suit, gold earrings catching the morning light. "Adrian," she purred, "I hope you're not still brooding over last night. Everyone was delighted to see you back in circulation." "Circulation," he repeated dryly, like a currency note. She laughed, that well-trained, glossy laugh that never reached her eyes. "You really should relax. It's bad for your image to look so human." Adrian picked up the first envelope and held it out. "Consider this an early surprise," he said. Camille's eyes narrowed playfully. "Is this your way of saying, I'm sorry for vanishing from Palm Beach last year?" "It's not an apology, it's a gift." She tore the envelope open, and her eyebrows lifted when she saw the black credit card inside. "Unlimited?" "For 72 hours, Adrian confirmed. "Spend it however you like." Camille's lips curved into a smile that was half affection, half ambition. "Finally, you're starting to behave like a man who knows his value. And mine." "Maybe," he said evenly. "I just want to see what makes people happy." "Oh, darling," she replied, tucking the card into her clutch. "For some of us, happiness has exquisite taste." And with that, she kissed him on the cheek, not affectionately, but like a brand, and glided out, leaving behind the faint scent of jasmine and self-assurance. James emerged from the adjoining room, expression unreadable. "Well, that went exactly how you expected." "Yes," Adrian said softly. "Exactly." He turned over the second envelope. "Send in Sienna." Dr. Sienna Blake entered with the precision of a woman who scheduled even her breathing. Her blazer was cut to perfection. Her heels measured confidence. She didn't waste time on small talk. "You wanted to see me?" Adrian gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, please. I have something for you." "Another project?" she asked, already pulling out a pen. "Because my department's projections for Q2 philanthropy are almost ready." "It's not a project," he interrupted. sliding the envelope across the table. It's personal. Sienna hesitated for exactly 2 seconds before picking it up. Her manicured nails caught the light as she opened it. A black card? He nodded. Use it for anything. No rules, no oversight. Just see where it takes you. Her brow furrowed slightly as if calculating. Is this an authorization test? A resource exercise? Call it an experiment, he said simply. Her lips parted in understanding, and a slow smile appeared, controlled, analytical. Then allow me to optimize it. I can design a 3-day community impact campaign, invite major donors, bring media coverage. It could double your foundation's visibility. Adrian studied her. You'd do all that, with no guarantee of return? There's always a return, she said, confident. You just have to know how to measure it. He almost laughed. Of course, data over instinct, strategy over sincerity. Both are necessary, she countered. One builds legacies, the other burns them. She stood, sliding the card into her leather portfolio. Don't worry, Adrian. I'll make sure your generosity trends for the right reasons. As she left, James peeked his head in. I assume she's already drafting a press release? Probably on her way to the printer, Adrian murmured. And the last one? Adrian looked at the final envelope. Plain, still sealed. The name Lena Reyes written in his own handwriting. The last one, he said quietly, isn't like the others. The penthouse had 2 worlds within it, the cold brilliance of its top floor offices, and the warmth of the living area, where Evelyn Cole, 82, spent her mornings watching the seagulls over Puget Sound. Lena Reyes appeared from the kitchen with her usual quiet rhythm, carrying a tray of chamomile tea and honey biscuits. Her uniform was simple, her ponytail slightly messy, but her presence brought a kind of calm that the polished rooms never had. Morning, Mr. Cole, she said softly. Your grandmother's resting in the solarium. She's in a good mood today. The classical station played her favorite piece. Bach again? Adrian asked, almost smiling. She says Bach sounds like forgiveness, Lena replied. I think she's right. He hesitated, then held up the last envelope. Lena, I have something for you. Her eyes widened in panic. Oh, did I do something wrong? Did I forget Mrs. Evelyn's medication? No, nothing like that, Adrian said quickly. It's a small gift for you. She looked at the envelope as if it might explode. For me? Yes, you can use it for anything you want. For the next 3 days, it's all yours. She blinked. Wait, anything? Anything, he confirmed. Lena laughed nervously. Are you serious? Because I once got excited over a free coffee voucher, and this seems a little above my pay grade. Adrian chuckled. Consider it a thank you. But I didn't do anything extraordinary, she said. I just make tea and listen to your grandmother's stories. Exactly, he murmured. And somehow, that's rare. Before Lena could answer, Evelyn Cole's voice echoed from the next room. Adrian, if this is another one of your social experiments, remember? Rats bite when cornered. Adrian rolled his eyes. Affectionately? Morning, Grandma. Evelyn wheeled herself into the room, silver hair perfectly arranged, eyes sharp with intelligence that time hadn't dimmed. Don't morning, Grandma me. I can smell schemes before breakfast. Lena looked caught in the middle, clutching the tray. It's just a card, Mrs. Evelyn. Mr. Cole said I can use it for anything. Evelyn turned her gaze toward her grandson. Anything, Then I hope she buys herself a new employer. Adrian smirked. You always assume the worst. Because it's safer, she said. Then her expression softened as she looked back at Lena. My dear, if you decide to spend a cent of that, make sure it's on something that matters. Money is a mirror. It only shows who you already are. Lena nodded shyly. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn reached out her thin, elegant hand and took the black card from Adrian. For a moment, she turned it in her fingers, studying the reflection of her own lined face on its glossy surface. Then she placed it carefully into Lena's palm. Use it wisely, she whispered, and if there's anything those children at Harbor House need, coats, food, paint, or simply a reason to smile, you have my permission. Lena looked down at the card as though it weighed more than gold. Mrs. Evelyn, are you sure? I'm old enough to be sure of many things, the woman said gently, including who deserves a little trust. Across the room, Adrian stood silent, watching the exchange, the frail hand of his grandmother resting over Lena's younger one, a quiet passing of something that wasn't money at all. For the first time that morning, he felt the experiment slipping out of his control, because somehow, what was meant to expose people's intentions was already revealing something about his own. The morning after the envelopes were handed out, Seattle woke beneath a thin veil of fog. From the 55th floor, the city looked like a board game, waiting for its next move. Adrian Cole stood by the panoramic glass wall of his office, black coffee in hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. His mind wasn't on markets or mergers. It was on the experiment quietly unfolding across the city. Behind him, James typed rapidly, monitoring 3 separate dashboards, each linked to one of the black cards. Numbers flickered, transactions came in, the real-time data of human desire. "Sir," James said, adjusting his glasses, "the spending has begun." Adrian didn't turn around. "Tell me something I don't already expect." "Well," James replied, "Camille has started strong." He tapped the first screen. A line of digital receipts appeared, glowing faintly in the morning light. Private helicopter from Bellevue Air to Palm Beach. Presidential suite at the Aurora Grand. A $12,000 champagne order. James scrolled. Apparently, she's hosting a dinner for influencers. Caption on her post, "The power couple is back and soaring higher than ever." Adrian's jaw tightened. Power couple. "Yes," James said. "Although to be fair, she's half right about the power part. Delete the hashtag if she tags me again." "Already done," James said dryly. Adrian took a sip of coffee. "And Sienna?" James swiped to the second dashboard, where a new list of purchases unfolded like a polished press release. "Dr. Blake's card activity is methodical," James narrated. "Designer office wear from Fifth Avenue, a new laptop, reservation deposits at the Aurora Grand, again. But this time, it's for a formal gala." "A gala," Adrian echoed. The invoices include gold foil invitations for corporate guests and a catering deal labeled Philanthropy and Influence. It seems she's creating an event under your foundation's name." Adrian raised a brow, without asking. "I suspect she considers it proactive management," James replied. Subtext: "This will raise both your public image and her career profile." Adrian stared at the figures. Every purchase was elegant, predictable, profitable. That was the problem. He sighed. "You know, I wanted authenticity. Instead, I'm getting press kits and champagne." James smirked. "To be fair, authenticity doesn't always come with room service." "And Lena?" Adrian asked. At the sound of her name, something in his tone shifted, curiosity softening the steel. James noticed but said nothing. He simply tapped the third dashboard. The results appeared instantly, and they made no sense. Adrian leaned forward. "Is that a grocery store?" "Yes," James confirmed. 3 transactions at a discount market near the docks. $30 on rice, beans, canned fruit. Another $40 on art supplies, brushes, poster, paint, construction paper. Adrian frowned. "That's not luxury shopping." "No, it's very unprofitable generosity," James said, scrolling. "There's also a pharmacy purchase. Baby formula, vitamins, medical tape. And then," he paused, squinting at the screen, "a thrift store. Toys, used picture books, wool blankets." Adrian turned toward him. "And?" James hesitated, suppressing a smile. 180 hot dogs." Adrian blinked. "What?" "Frozen," James said, holding back laughter. "Lowest grade, bulk pack, on sale. The kind even seagulls might reject." Adrian finally turned from the window, incredulous. "She spent an unlimited credit card on rice and hot dogs?" "It appears so, and some balloons." "Balloons?" "Yes. The transaction says Harbor House Community Shelter, Party Supplies." Adrian was silent for a long time. The only sound was the quiet hum of the office and the faint foghorn echoing from the bay below. James tapped the tablet again, zooming in on the details. The reflection of the words glimmered faintly across the glass wall. Harbor House Community Shelter. "I believe that's the old children's center near the docks," James said softly. "Didn't Mrs. Evelyn donate there years ago?" Adrian nodded, still staring at the screen. "Once. Before my grandfather decided community work didn't yield quarterly returns. Seems Lena disagrees. He didn't reply. Instead, he reached for the tablet, scrolling through the list of Lena's transactions himself. Each line felt like a story, quiet, practical, entirely out of place in his world. Rice, milk, diapers, paint, party streamers. He looked up, half amused, half confused. This woman has no idea what unlimited means. Or maybe, James said gently, she knows exactly what it means. Adrian glanced at him. Explain. Everyone else sees the card as freedom to take. She might see it as freedom to give. Adrian exhaled slowly. That's a nice theory. You sound unconvinced. I've lived long enough to know people are rarely that pure, James. There's always a reason. Even good deeds have price tags. True, James agreed, but not all currencies are printed. That line hung in the air, simple and sharp. Adrian set the tablet down and walked toward the window again. Below him, the city stretched endlessly, cranes building towers, cars threading through traffic, lives moving in patterns of ambition. But somewhere, far from that skyline, a young woman with messy hair and a black credit card was shopping for diapers and crayons. It didn't fit any category he understood. He spoke almost to himself. What kind of person buys hot dogs when they can buy diamonds? The same kind, James said, who hums while vacuuming the hall and refuses to take a Christmas bonus. Adrian turned his head slightly, a faint smile ghosting across his face. You've been paying attention. It's part of my job description, James replied. Observe the chaos, manage the damage. Adrian chuckled, then, more quietly, she's impossible to categorize, which is exactly why you picked her. Adrian looked down at the tablet again. The reflection of his own face overlapped with the glowing words, Harbor House Community Shelter. For a brief moment, he looked like two men, one made of glass and steel, the other made of questions he didn't know how to answer. He reached for his coffee, but it had gone cold. James, he said finally, get me everything you can find about that place, Harbor House. Its director, its activities, anything. You planning to make a donation, sir? James teased. Adrian shook his head. No, just curious. Curious, James repeated, arching an eyebrow. That's how you start every bad idea. Maybe, Adrian admitted, but it's the good kind of bad. James laughed softly. And what about Camille and Sienna? Should I keep monitoring their spending? Of course, Adrian said, walking back to his desk. Let them play their roles. Let's see how long it takes before the masks crack. He picked up the tablet one more time, zooming in on the last line of Lena's transactions, the one marked with the smallest dollar amount, but the biggest question. Harbor House Community Shelter. Party supplies? The phrase looked ordinary, but it pulsed like a secret. Adrian traced a finger along the screen, his reflection fractured by the light. He whispered, almost without realizing, "What are you doing, Lena Reyes?" James closed his laptop with a knowing sigh. "Should I schedule an unplanned detour for you this afternoon?" Adrian smiled faintly. "No need to schedule curiosity." "Noted," James said, heading for the door. "Just try not to turn it into another life lesson. Last time, we ended up adopting a rescue dog and firing your PR team." Adrian laughed under his breath. "You're the one who named the dog Tax Deduction." James paused, grinning. "True, and I stand by it." When the door closed, Adrian stood alone again, the hum of the city seeping through the glass. On the desk, 3 stories glowed from the screens, 3 versions of freedom, 3 reflections of desire. But it was the smallest one, the simplest one, that refused to leave his mind. A grocery list, a charity name, a bundle of hot dogs, and for the first time in a very long while, Adrian Cole, the man who could predict markets, people, and outcomes with precision, had no idea what would happen next. Seattle's late afternoon light turned the bay silver as Adrian Cole stepped into the garage, tossing a glance at his row of spotless cars. He bypassed the Rolls, ignored the Aston, and stopped at an old SUV in the corner, plain, unwashed, invisible. "Going somewhere, sir?" James asked from the doorway, mug in hand. "Just getting some air," Adrian said, pulling on a jacket. James smiled. "From the direction of Harbor House, I assume?" Adrian didn't answer. He just started the engine. The city changed the further he drove. Towers faded into cracked sidewalks, graffiti walls, and the dull clang of shipyards. He finally found the address, Harbor House Community Center, squeezed between a shipping warehouse and an abandoned cannery. The sign above the door was hand-painted, the letters chipped but proud. Through the open gate, laughter spilled out. Wild, unfiltered, nothing like the rehearsed smiles of corporate galas. Adrian lingered outside, unseen. Inside, Lena Reyes was a whirlwind of motion. Jeans rolled, hair tied back, an old t-shirt streaked with paint. She taped paper stars across the cracked wall, blowing up balloons until she nearly lost her balance. Around her, a dozen children raced like comets, clinging to her legs, shouting her name. "Miss Lena! Miss Lena!" The blue balloon escaped. "Then chase it, Captain," she said, pretending to salute. "No balloon left behind!" The room erupted with laughter. Adrian leaned on the metal fence, watching. For someone who owned half the city skyline, he'd never seen joy built out of so little. A small girl tripped on the uneven floor and began to cry. Lena dropped everything and rushed to her. "Oh, my brave one," she murmured, brushing the child's knee. "You know what this means?" The girl shook her head, sniffling. "It means your superhero training just leveled up. Every hero has a scar, proof they don't give up. And heroes," she whispered, "get an extra hot dog with ketchup." The girl's tears vanished instantly. Laughter returned, bright and unstoppable. Adrian felt something twist inside him. Money had bought him buildings, cars, silence. Never this. He took a step closer, pretending to study the mural by the door. From this distance, he could smell the mix of paint, sugar, and cheap mustard. He could hear Lena's voice rising above the chaos, light and teasing. "Miss Lena, we're out of balloons," a boy shouted. "Then we improvise," she said, twisting napkins into messy paper flowers. "See? Nature says hi." The children gasped. Adrian smiled without realizing. She had turned scarcity into art, broken walls into laughter. For a man who measured everything in data and value, it felt disarming. Then one boy spotted him. "Miss Lena, there's a man outside." Lena turned, eyes narrowing until she recognized him. "Mr. Cole, are you lost?" Adrian cleared his throat. "Just in the neighborhood." She laughed softly. "This neighborhood doesn't have your kind of neighborhood." He tried to recover. "I wanted to see how you were using the card." "Oh," she said, folding her arms. "So you're checking up on me?" "Not checking," he corrected. "Observing." That's exactly what a checker would say. The kids giggled. One whispered, "He's funny." Lena smiled. "He's just allergic to fun." "I once attended a party," Adrian replied. "Was it a shareholder meeting?" The laughter that followed filled the entire room. For the first time, Adrian laughed with them, not above them. Soon he found himself holding paper plates, passing out hot dogs, helping a boy pour lemonade that sloshed everywhere. He ruined his shirt, burnt his fingers, and still somehow felt alive. "Why are you here, really?" Lena asked quietly as they worked side by side. He looked around, at the painted stars, the crooked balloons, the happy chaos. "I wanted to see what happiness looks like when it isn't bought." She tilted her head. "And it's messy," he admitted. "And loud." She grinned. "Exactly right." When twilight settled over the bay, the party spilled into the cracked courtyard. Children ran barefoot across the concrete, chasing bubbles that floated into the violet sky. Lena wore a clown nose now, dancing clumsily with two little girls. Adrian stood in the doorway, half in shadow, half in awe. He'd built towers of steel, yet this peeling brick building filled with laughter, felt more solid than any empire he'd ever owned. He caught himself smiling again as Lena turned toward him, face flushed, hair sticking out, joy radiating like sunlight through glass. For a man who thought he'd seen everything, he suddenly realized how little he understood. This wasn't charity. It wasn't data. It wasn't even his experiment anymore. It was a mirror, and in it, for the first time in years, Adrian saw himself, human, humbled, and strangely hopeful. That night, as he drove away, he looked at his hands on the steering wheel. They still smelled faintly of ketchup and smoke. He laughed under his breath. The sound startled him. It had been years since laughter came without effort. Maybe, he thought, money didn't reveal who people were. Maybe it revealed who he had become. And somewhere behind him, at a little shelter by the harbor, the woman he'd underestimated was proving that joy was the only investment that never lost value. The sun hovered low over Puget Sound, bleeding orange light across the cracked courtyard of Harbor House. The air smelled of salt, smoke, and cheap mustard. Adrian Cole, billionaire, public enigma, and self-proclaimed expert in efficiency, was now standing beside a portable grill, holding a pair of tongs he clearly had no idea how to use. "Careful, those are the good ones," Lena said, laughing as another hot dog rolled off the grate and onto the dusty ground. Adrian bent to retrieve it, nearly singeing his sleeve in the process. Define good. They all look like small disasters. "Exactly," she said, smirking. "So, you're in good company." The children around them erupted in laughter. One boy pointed at Adrian's spotless shoes. "Mister, your shoes cost more than our fridge." "Possibly," Adrian admitted, "but the fridge probably works better." That earned him a cheer. The next moment, a splatter of ketchup landed across his pale blue dress shirt. The courtyard exploded with giggles. "He's bleeding ketchup," someone yelled. Lena doubled over laughing. Okay, stop torturing the poor man. Hand me the tongs before you start a fire." "I was doing fine," Adrian protested. "You were doing something," she replied, wiping ketchup off his sleeve with a napkin that somehow made it worse. "Congratulations, you've officially turned philanthropy into slapstick." Her tone wasn't deferential or cautious. It was teasing, easy, natural, the way people spoke to equals. Adrian couldn't remember the last time someone talked to him that way without an agenda. He stepped back, surrendering the tongs. "Fine, you grill. I'll supervise." Lena grinned. Translation, I'll save the food, you save face. It wasn't untrue. In less than 15 minutes, the chaos turned rhythmic. Lena flipped hot dogs with confidence born from experience. Adrian passed out paper plates, dodging ketchup packets and tiny fingers reaching for seconds. Each child had a story, and Lena knew them all. "That's Mateo," she said, nodding toward a boy proudly carrying a balloon sword. "He wants to be an engineer, builds bridges out of popsicle sticks." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious." "He built one that held a whole dictionary once," she said. "I think it collapsed when he tried to add the Oxford thesaurus, but the point stands." A few feet away, a girl with freckles tugged Lena's sleeve. "Miss Lena, can I have another one, please?" "Only if you eat some fruit, too," Lena replied. "I did. Fruit snacks don't count." The girl giggled and ran off to fetch an apple slice. Adrian watched all of it, the warmth, the unfiltered affection, the way these children clung to Lena as if she were the anchor in their small, unpredictable world. He found himself smiling again, without realizing. When the last of the food was served and the grill hissed to a quiet fade, the children sprawled on blankets under the setting sun. Some drew with chalk on the cement. Others lay back watching clouds. The chaos had softened into calm. Adrian sat beside Lena on the edge of the step, both of them sticky with sugar and laughter. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the richest man in the world, just a man. "Do you do this often?" he asked, nodding toward the courtyard. Lena shrugged. "Whenever I can. Harbor House doesn't have much funding. The staff does what they can, but the kids need more than food. They need moments that feel like childhood." He studied her for a moment. "And you pay for this out of your own pocket?" She nodded, brushing paint off her jeans. "Most of the time, yeah. Some of the parents can't help. Some aren't around at all." "Why?" Adrian asked. "You could spend your days off resting, or doing anything else." Lena smiled faintly, eyes on the horizon. "Because if I don't, no one will. And they deserve someone to show up, even if it's just me." The words hit him harder than he expected. No speech, no charity gala, no influencer post had ever carried that much truth in so few syllables. He leaned back, letting the sentence echo between them. The kids' laughter drifted through the air like music. A boy tried to balance 3 paper cups. Another snored softly on a blanket. Lena's hair caught the sunset light, strands turning to gold. Adrian said quietly, "You make it look easy?" "It isn't," she said. "But it's simple." He turned toward her. "What's the difference?" "Easy means no effort," she said. Simple means it's worth the effort. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time understood the distance between the world he lived in and the one she protected. In his world, everything came with conditions. In hers, love was the only currency that mattered. A few minutes passed in comfortable silence. The sea breeze carried the sound of gulls and faraway traffic. Adrian finally spoke, almost to himself. You know, no one's ever said anything that honest to me without wanting something in return. Lena laughed softly. Maybe you're just surrounded by the wrong kind of people. Maybe, he admitted. Or maybe, she said, you stopped believing there are right ones. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because somewhere deep down, she was right. As the last streak of sunlight disappeared, Lena began packing up, folding tables, collecting trash, counting how many kids needed rides home. Adrian helped without being asked, handing out paper bags, lifting boxes to her small hatchback parked by the fence. When they were done, the courtyard was quiet again. Only the faint echo of laughter lingered. Lena leaned against the car, wiping her forehead. You did well for a first-timer, only lost half the food. I aim for progress, he said. She smiled. Thanks for helping, Mr. Cole. Adrian, he corrected gently. Her eyes lifted to his. Then thank you, Adrian. It was simple, but it carried weight. He nodded. Anytime. Careful, she teased. I might hold you to that. I hope you do. Her expression softened. For a second, neither spoke. The world shrank to the space between them. The hum of the city, the scent of grilled food, the quiet rhythm of two people realizing something they couldn't yet name. Then a child's voice called from the gate. Miss Lena, we forgot the balloons. She laughed, breaking the spell. Duty calls. He watched her jog back toward the courtyard, her silhouette framed against the sunset. Simple, bright, unforgettable. Later that night, back in his penthouse, Adrian washed his hands and stared at the faint red stain of ketchup that refused to fade. It wasn't a mark of embarrassment anymore. It was proof of laughter, of chaos, of something real. He touched it lightly and smiled. Maybe connection didn't need to be engineered. Maybe it just needed a little mess. Morning came soft and gray over Seattle, the kind of light that made reflections linger longer on wet pavement. Adrian Cole stood by the window of his penthouse, still in yesterday's shirt, staring into a mug of untouched espresso. He hadn't slept much. The laughter from Harbor House wouldn't leave his head. It echoed through the silence of his apartment like a haunting melody, one that was both alien and comforting. James entered quietly, holding a folder. Sir, the foundation wants confirmation for the charity gala next month. Adrian waved him off. Later. Later? James raised an eyebrow. That word doesn't exist in your calendar. Adrian looked up, eyes unfocused. I'm taking the morning off. James blinked. Are you sick? No, Adrian said, grabbing his keys. Just curious. The cafe sat on a narrow street near the harbor, its windows fogged by the warmth inside. The sign above the door simply read, Dockside Coffee. It was the kind of place you walked past 100 times without noticing, until you needed to. Lena Reyes was already there, seated by the window, her hair damp from drizzle. When Adrian stepped in, she glanced up, startled. Mr. Cole, she asked. You sure you're not lost? There's no valet here. He smiled, brushing off his coat. I thought we could talk about my grandmother. About Mrs. Evelyn, or about the fact that you look like you haven't slept in 3 days? Adrian chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Caught? Coffee first, she said, signaling the barista. Then confessions. The cafe was small. Wood tables, mismatched mugs, the faint scent of cinnamon and rain. Adrian instinctively reached to adjust his watch, then stopped. He unbuckled the expensive silver timepiece and slipped it into his coat pocket. Lena noticed. Trying not to scare the locals? Something like that, he admitted. She grinned. Smart move. That watch could pay for half the rent in this neighborhood. The barista brought over 2 steaming mugs. Lena pushed one toward him. This is better than that Italian machine in your penthouse. Trust me. He raised an eyebrow, tasting it. It's surprisingly good. Told you, she said. Some things taste better when they're imperfect. He studied her over the rim of the cup. You really like this place? It reminds me of home, she said softly. You mean Harbor House? She nodded, wrapping her hands around the mug as though warming herself from the inside. Sort of. I didn't really have one before that. Adrian leaned in slightly. What do you mean? Lena hesitated, then smiled. Not out of shyness, but habit. The kind of smile people learn when they've told hard stories too many times. I grew up in the foster system, she said simply. Bounced from one house to another. I stopped counting at 13. He listened, saying nothing. Most places were fine, she continued. Some weren't. You learn to travel light. Don't get attached. Don't unpack fully. People leave, or you do. Adrian's throat tightened. That sounds lonely? It was, she said. Until Harbor House. He frowned. But that's a children's shelter. It was. For me, it became something else. She glanced out the window, watching rain trace crooked lines down the glass. I ended up there at 15. The director, Ms. Margaret, didn't treat us like statistics. She gave us chores, routines, purpose. Said the best way to heal is to help someone else. So I did. She paused, smiling faintly. That's where I met the little ones I still visit now. Back then, I was their big sister. Now, I guess I'm just someone who refuses to forget them. Adrian felt something heavy settle in his chest. He had spent fortunes trying to erase his own past, while this woman built hers from pieces of kindness. And after that, he asked quietly, I studied psychology at the community college, part-time, took every scholarship I could find, specialized in elderly communication. Why that? Because of a part-time job I had when I was 18, she said. I worked at a nursing home. Most of the residents were ignored, not out of cruelty, just neglect. The staff talked around them, not to them. They were treated like furniture. She traced her finger along the coffee cup rim. One woman, Mrs. Lang, used to whisper to herself all day. People thought she was confused. I started listening. Turns out she was reciting her late husband's letters from memory. Adrian was silent. That's when I decided, Lena continued softly. If no one else was going to treat them like humans, I would. I wanted to learn how to speak to people who felt forgotten, the way I used to feel. He stared at her. This young woman sitting in a thrift store coat, speaking with the kind of grace money could never buy. That's why my grandmother loves you, he said finally. Lena looked surprised. Mrs. Evelyn? She said you talk to her like she's a person, not a patient. Lena laughed lightly. She talks to me like a drill sergeant, so I guess it evens out. Adrian smiled. She only argues with people she respects. Then I'm honored, Lena said. Though she did threaten to fire me once. For what? For telling her she should drink more water. Adrian chuckled, shaking his head. That sounds exactly like her. A comfortable silence followed. Outside, the drizzle thickened, blurring the city into watercolor. Inside, the cafe hummed with quiet chatter and the clink of cups. Adrian found himself speaking without calculation. You know, for someone who's been through so much, you don't sound bitter. Lena looked up. Bitterness is heavy. I carried it once. Didn't like the weight. He nodded slowly. You make it sound easy. It's not, she said, but it's simple. That word again. Simple. The same way she'd described happiness the day before. Adrian studied her hands. Small, steady, calloused from work, resting on the table. She wasn't performing. She wasn't selling. She was just present. For a man surrounded by polished perfection, her authenticity felt almost radical. He set down his cup. You ever think about leaving, doing something bigger? Lena shrugged. Maybe one day, but I think people confuse bigger with better. He smiled faintly. You sound like my grandmother. She's wise, Lena said, and a little scary. Mostly scary, he corrected. They both laughed. When the laughter faded, Adrian leaned back, his voice quieter now. You know, I started that experiment with those cards because I thought I'd see people's true nature. And, she asked, he hesitated. Maybe I did, just not the version I expected. Lena tilted her head. Meaning? He looked at her for a long moment, as if searching for the right words, or maybe just permission to feel them. Meaning, he said slowly, you might be the only person I've met in years who makes goodness look effortless. Lena blushed, shaking her head. It's not effortless. I just don't see the point of pretending to be someone else. Adrian smiled, a real, tired, grateful smile. I wish I'd learned that sooner. Outside, rain eased into sunlight, breaking through gray clouds. Inside, 2 cups sat empty between them, the steam gone, but something warmer left in its place. As they stood to leave, Lena glanced at him. You should sleep, you know. You look human when you're tired. It's weird, he laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. It was. And for the first time, Adrian wasn't in a rush to go anywhere. The Aurora Grand Hotel shimmered under a chandelier of glass and gold, each crystal droplet reflecting ambition. Inside the ballroom, Dr. Sienna Blake stood at the center, tablet in hand, orchestrating perfection. Her voice carried the confident rhythm of someone who had everything under control. Lighting at 70%, the stage banner should read, Cole Foundation presents, Harbor House Benefit Gala, no typos. And the media booth stays stage left. I want the cameras angled toward the donor wall. Her assistant scribbled notes while staff scurried across the polished floor. At the far end, Camille Hart glided in, wearing white silk and pearls. Darling, she announced, this looks divine. Finally, an event that feels worthy of the Cole name. Sienna looked up, smiling politely. We're aiming for timeless sophistication. Camille gave a knowing nod. And visibility, I hope. The press must see the right faces. I'll send my photographer the guest list. Already handled, Sienna replied smoothly. I've arranged a media segment with Seattle Business Review. They'll want a soundbite from you, as the family representative. Of course, Camille said, pleased. After all, what's good for Harbor House is good for the Cole legacy. Exactly. But as they exchanged professional smiles, the air between them was sharp as glass. Both women knew this event wasn't just philanthropy. It was power theater. Hours later, Adrian walked into the same ballroom. The preparations looked flawless and empty. He studied the massive digital screens flashing phrases like empathy as strategy and social impact leadership. He sighed. Impact, he muttered. Always sounds better than kindness. Sienna approached him, tablet poised like a weapon. Perfect timing. We're finalizing the speaker lineup. Good, Adrian said. Then I have one change. Camille's heels clicked across the marble as she joined them. Don't tell me you're giving yourself another speech. People are tired of billionaires talking about compassion. Relax, Adrian said dryly. It's not me. Sienna blinked. Then who? Adrian looked up from the stage toward the back of the room where Lena had just entered, awkwardly carrying a small paper bag. Her, he said simply. The room froze. Excuse me? Camille's smile cracked. Lena Reyes, he repeated. She'll speak about Harbor House. It's her story, not ours. Camille let out a soft laugh, the kind people use before saying something cruel. Adrian, that's adorable, but she's, 24? She works for your grandmother. This is a major press event, not a daycare talent show. Sienna stepped in carefully, voice diplomatic. Mr. Cole, while I agree Lena's connection to Harbor House is touching, she doesn't have the public speaking experience. We can include her quote in the video montage. Instead, Adrian shook his head. No montage, no filters. People want real. Camille crossed her arms. You're gambling with your foundation's reputation to make a point. I'm not gambling, Adrian said, calm but firm. I'm listening. Harbor House exists because people like Lena keep it alive. The least we can do is let her speak. Sienna's smile tightened. Very well, but don't say I didn't warn you if she freezes on stage. Camille tossed her hair. Or worse, says something unscripted. Adrian's tone turned razor sharp. That's the point. Behind them, Lena's voice broke the tension. Wait, what? Speak? As in front of people? Everyone turned. She looked pale, holding the paper bag like a shield. Adrian stepped toward her. Yes, you'll tell them what Harbor House really is. I can't do that, she stammered. I'm not good with speeches. My idea of public speaking is reading bedtime stories to 6-year-olds. You'll be fine, he said. No, I won't, she protested. Those people wear gowns that cost more than my car. I can't even pronounce half their last names. Camille whispered loudly. Exactly. Adrian ignored her. You don't need fancy words, Lena. Just tell the truth. No one can do that better than you. Sienna exhaled, forcing a polite smile. I'll prepare cue cards. Keep it safe. No cue cards, Adrian said. She doesn't need a script. Camille threw up her hands. Unbelievable. That night, back in the penthouse kitchen, the light was soft and golden, the chandelier hummed faintly, and the scent of chamomile tea drifted through the air. Evelyn Cole sat in her armchair, wrapped in a shawl, watching her grandson and Lena standing across from each other. On the counter sat a stack of handwritten notes and an open laptop playing an instrumental track for rhythm practice. Lena frowned at her messy handwriting. See? Even my notes look nervous. Adrian leaned against the counter, arms folded. You're overthinking it. I'm underqualified, she shot back. Those women are born for microphones. I'm born for cleaning up after microphones. Stop, he said gently. You have something none of them do, sincerity. She looked up, skeptical. That's not a skill, Mr. Cole. It's rarer than any skill I've seen, he replied. She tried again, reading aloud. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. Hello. She groaned. I sound like a voicemail. Evelyn chuckled. You sound like a person, which is refreshing. Lena looked at the elderly woman with a sheepish smile. Mrs. Evelyn, I'm not sure I can pull this off. Nonsense, Evelyn said, waving a hand. If those reporters can pretend to care, you can certainly pretend not to faint. Adrian laughed. There's our pep talk. Lena giggled, nerves softening. Again, Adrian said. She took a breath and started from the top, voice trembling at first, then steadying as she spoke about the children, Mateo's popsicle bridges, the twins' balloon obsession, the way the building smelled of crayons and hope. By the end, her words flowed like memory. When she finished, Evelyn clapped her thin hands. Better, but cut out that part where you apologize for your English. You sound fine. Stop giving away your power. Lena blushed. Yes, ma'am. Adrian scribbled something on her note and turned it toward her. It read, Hope is not a luxury. She stared at it for a moment, the words sinking in. That's beautiful. He smiled. It's true. That's what Harbor House is. She tucked the note into her pocket like a secret. Then I'll say it, but you're standing next to me the whole time. I will, he said softly, but you won't need me. Over the next few nights, the kitchen became their rehearsal hall. The marble counter transformed into a stage. Adrian practiced timing with a stopwatch. Lena practiced courage. Evelyn served as both critic and cheerleader, sipping tea and nodding with quiet pride. Each night, the gap between billionaire and caregiver closed a little more, replaced by something wordless but undeniable. On the final night before the gala, Lena stumbled on her opening line again. Good evening, everyone. Adrian interrupted gently. Don't say everyone. Say friends. Friends? Because that's how you see them, he said, even the ones who don't deserve it. She smiled, and something warm passed between them, unspoken, fragile, real. Evelyn caught it instantly and cleared her throat. All right, enough practice. Some of us need sleep before the revolution. Lena laughed, setting her papers aside. Thank you, Mrs. Evelyn. The old woman's eyes softened. No, dear, thank you, for reminding this family what grace looks like. Adrian met his grandmother's gaze. For once, she didn't tease him. She simply nodded, a silent blessing. And as the lights dimmed in the penthouse, the faint hum of the city outside, Lena's voice echoed one last time across the kitchen. Hope is not a luxury. This time, it didn't sound like practice. It sounded like truth. The ballroom of the Aurora Grand Hotel gleamed like a cathedral of light. Hundreds of crystals hung from the chandeliers, scattering reflections across velvet walls. Cameras clicked. The scent of perfume, champagne, and ambition filled the air. A string quartet played softly near the stage, while servers floated between tables draped in gold linen. Every corner whispered wealth and expectation. Dr. Sienna Blake stood near the stage, clipboard in hand, wearing a sleek silver gown that looked tailored for magazine covers. She smiled at the arriving guests with the poise of a diplomat. Welcome, Mr. Reynolds, she said, shaking hands with a banking executive. We're thrilled you could support our mission tonight. Across the room, Camille Hart made her entrance like an actress walking onto a red carpet, Cameras flashed. Her gown, ivory silk, slit to perfection, shimmered beneath the chandeliers. "Smile for the Cole Foundation," someone called. She tilted her head just right, her diamond earrings catching every flash. "Gladly," she said, her smile polished and hollow. And then, slipping quietly through the side door, came Lena Reyes. Her dress, simple black, soft fabric hugging her shoulders, wasn't couture, but it carried a different kind of beauty. Evelyn had chosen it. Adrian had paid for it, and Lena kept tugging at the hem like she was afraid to wrinkle the night itself. She looked around at the glittering crowd and whispered to herself, "I shouldn't be here." From behind her, Adrian's voice answered softly, "You should be exactly here." Lena turned. Adrian stood tall in a dark tuxedo, the picture of effortless control, but his eyes carried warmth. "You look perfect," he said. She shook her head. "I look like I borrowed someone else's life." "You borrowed nothing," he said quietly. "You earned this." Before she could reply, Sienna approached. "Mr. Cole, the press is ready. Miss Reyes, the stage is yours after my opening remarks. Just stay close to the microphone and don't move too much." Lena nodded, clutching the folded pages in her hand. Her heart thudded against her ribs like it wanted to escape. The lights dimmed, the soft chatter faded to silence. Sienna took the stage first, her voice smooth and rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate progress, innovation, and compassion. Together, we can elevate lives and create a lasting impact." Applause. Cameras. Behind the curtain, Lena's hands shook. She looked at Adrian standing in the front row. He gave a small nod, not of command, but of trust. Sienna concluded, "And now, to share her experience from the heart of Harbor House, please welcome Miss Lena Reyes." The spotlight turned white hot. Lena stepped forward, one cautious step at a time. Her heels wobbled, her breath caught, and the ballroom stretched endlessly before her. Rows of faces, polished and powerful. She reached the microphone and stared at the paper in her hand. Her voice trembled. "Good evening," she began. I don't usually talk to people like this." A few polite smiles from the audience. "I mean," she continued, glancing nervously at the crowd, "I don't mean people like this, like you're aliens or anything. Just people who wear suits that probably cost more than my car." A ripple of laughter rolled through the hall. Her tension eased a little. She smiled faintly. "Usually, I talk to 6-year-olds arguing about who gets the last hot dog, or which superhero would win if ketchup counted as a superpower." Laughter again, genuine this time. The ice broke. Lena took a deep breath and looked out across the sea of faces. "So, I guess I'll do what I always do, tell a story." She began with a soft, almost fragile tone. "At Harbor House, we don't have much. Paint chips off the walls, the heaters squeak, the windows let in more wind than light some days. But the kids, they bring their own light." Her eyes drifted upward, finding Adrian's face in the crowd. He smiled faintly. "There's a boy named Mateo," she said. "He carries a backpack that's completely empty, but he refuses to throw it away because he says one day it'll be full of dreams and snacks." A quiet chuckle spread through the crowd. Then there's Sarah, who collects pebbles because each one, she swears, has a different face. And there's little Jamie. He calls every scrape on his knee a hero training badge. He says if you don't have at least 3, you're not trying hard enough. The laughter faded into a silence so deep it almost hummed. "For these kids," Lena continued softly, "hope isn't a fancy word. It's dinner, it's warmth, it's someone remembering their name. Harbor House isn't a building, it's the one place that tells them they matter." Her voice wavered, but she didn't falter. "I know, because once, I was one of them." Gasps fluttered through the room. Cameras zoomed closer. Adrian's chest tightened. "I grew up there," she said. "Back when I didn't have anyone. The people at Harbor House, they became my family. And tonight, every donation you make isn't charity. It's a second chance for a child to believe that the world hasn't forgotten them." For a moment, there was nothing. No clinking glasses, no whispers, just the steady hum of the lights. And then, chaos. A waiter, rushing between tables, tripped on a loose cable. A tray of champagne flutes flew into the air. Crash. Golden liquid splashed across the tuxedo of Mr. Whitmore, one of Seattle's most influential bankers. The room gasped. Lena froze. "Oh no," she said into the mic before she could stop herself. "Sir, I'm so sorry. Please don't sue me. I can only pay you back in hot dogs." For half a second, silence. Then the entire room erupted with laughter. Even Mr. Whitmore wiped champagne from his jacket and grinned. "Miss, that's the best offer I've had all year." Lena covered her face, laughing too. "Then we have a deal, sir." The tension that had hovered like static suddenly dissolved. The entire ballroom felt lighter, alive. Even Sienna reluctantly was smiling. Camille forced a laugh, though her eyes flashed with irritation. When the applause finally came, it was thunderous. Lena stepped back from the mic, overwhelmed, eyes shining. Adrian rose to his feet, leading the standing ovation. Evelyn, watching from a private table, dabbed a tear from her cheek. Lena looked down at them all, the executives, the press, the elegant guests. And for once she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt seen. "Thank you," she said simply, voice steady now. "For listening, and for believing that hope is not a luxury." The room fell silent again, but this time it was the kind of silence that meant everyone was feeling something they couldn't quite name. As Lena stepped away from the microphone, Adrian met her halfway at the foot of the stage. "You were incredible," he said. She exhaled shakily. "I almost threw up." "You almost changed the world," he corrected. Lena smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "Same thing, maybe." Later that night, when the ballroom emptied and the chandeliers dimmed, whispers lingered. Not about the gowns, not about the donors, but about the girl in the black dress who spoke like she remembered every heart she wanted to heal. And somewhere in the quiet, Adrian Cole knew. His experiment had ended the moment Lena began to speak. The gala was over, but the echoes lingered. Music faded into memory. Laughter dissolved into the night air, and what remained was the faint hum of city lights below the grand terrace of the Aurora Grand Hotel. Seattle shimmered in silver reflections. Glass towers mirrored the harbor, and rain drizzled like distant static. On the balcony, Adrian Cole stood beside Lena Reyes, both still half breathless from the whirlwind of the evening. Neither spoke at first. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full, like the quiet after a song that had said everything words couldn't. "You know," Adrian finally said, his voice low, thoughtful, "I've spent years listening to people talk about impact, strategy, philanthropy. They all sound the same, cold, rehearsed." He turned toward her. "But tonight, you made people feel something. You did what a 20-page PR deck never could." Lena's laugh came out soft, shy. "That's just because I spilled champagne on a millionaire." He smiled. "No, that's because you told the truth." She met his eyes then, really met them, and saw a warmth that scared her a little. "I wasn't trying to make an impression," she said. "I just wanted them to see the kids the way I do." "They did," Adrian murmured, "and they saw you too." A soft wind lifted her hair. He reached up instinctively, brushing a loose strand away. His hand lingered a moment too long near her face. Lena froze, breath caught between fear and something else entirely. "Adrian," she whispered. He hesitated, as if weighing the distance between impulse and consequence, then closed it. The kiss was gentle, uncertain, real. It wasn't a cinematic sweep of passion. It was quieter, fragile, like two people finding something they hadn't known they were missing. When they pulled apart, the city stretched around them, infinite and alive. Lena smiled nervously. "That was unexpected?" he said. "Unexpected," she echoed, her voice trembling. "But not wrong." He looked at her, and for once in his life, the billionaire who could buy anything felt like he'd finally found something he couldn't price. But not every witness on that balcony saw love. Some saw a threat. From the glass corridor inside, Camille Hart stood frozen, her manicured hand clutching the edge of the curtain. Her reflection in the window stared back at her, elegant, composed, but beneath it, fury simmered. Her entire life had been written in alliances and expectations. The Cole heir and the Hart heiress, a perfect merger. And now, in one stolen kiss, a girl in a department store dress had rewritten the ending. She turned her head sharply. Dr. Sienna Blake stood beside her, expression unreadable, but the flicker in her eyes said everything. "Well," Camille said, voice icy, "it seems your pet project just became his passion project." Sienna didn't answer. She adjusted the strap of her silver gown, watching Adrian and Lena still lost in quiet conversation. "Do you realize what this means?" Camille pressed. "The entire foundation, the media, the donors, they'll all see her as the new face beside him." Sienna's reply was calm, almost clinical. "It's inconvenient." "Inconvenient?" Camille hissed. "It's catastrophic." For the first time that night, their eyes met. Two women from different worlds, united by a shared enemy. Camille exhaled, her composure sliding back into place. "You have the connections, the media, the board. I have the motive." Sienna's gaze sharpened. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "A correction," Camille said smoothly. "A narrative adjustment. She's naive. He's sentimental. People will believe she took advantage of that." Sienna hesitated. "You're talking about defamation." "I'm talking about preservation," Camille corrected. "You care about your influence. I care about my position. This girl is a storm neither of us needs." Sienna's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, the moral line flickered in her mind, and then vanished. "What are you proposing?" Camille's voice lowered to a whisper. "We tell the truth, just slightly rearranged." By midnight, the ballroom was empty, the last guests long gone. But in the service corridor, under the low hum of the air conditioning vents, Camille and Sienna stood side by side, faces dimly lit by the glow of Sienna's phone. Lines of text glowed on the screen. Source close to the Cole Foundation reveals misuse of funds during gala event. Internal documents suggest emotional manipulation and self-promotion behind Harbor House campaign. Anonymous insiders question the integrity of the young caretaker at the center of the foundation's new initiative. Camille smiled faintly. Anonymous insiders. How poetic. Sienna's fingers hovered above the send button. "This could destroy her, you know." "That's the point," Camille said coldly. Sienna hesitated, just long enough for her reflection to look human, then pressed send. A notification blinked. Message delivered to Seattle Morning Tribune editorial desk. They exchanged one look, part triumph, part dread, before walking in opposite directions down the hall. Behind them, the city sparkled in silence. Below, on the street, photographers packed away their lenses, unaware that by dawn, the same girl they had applauded would become a headline. The next morning, sunlight spilled across Adrian's penthouse, painting everything gold. The illusion of peace before impact. He stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee, when James entered, his face pale. "Sir," he said quietly, "you need to see this." He handed Adrian a tablet. The headline blared in bold black letters. "Billionaire's caregiver accused of embezzling community funds." Adrian's hand froze around the cup. The article was cruelly precise, filled with unnamed sources, vague references to financial discrepancies, and insinuations that Lena had leveraged emotional appeal for personal recognition. There was even a quote from an internal staff member describing her as a manipulative opportunist. Adrian's voice was barely audible. "Where did this come from?" "Local paper," James said grimly. "But it's already spreading. Other outlets are picking it up." Adrian scrolled through the comments beneath the article. Words like fraud, scandal, charity scheme jumped out at him, each one a punch to the chest. And in every attached photo, Lena's face, smiling nervously at the gala, appeared beside his. He felt his stomach twist. "This can't be real. She would never—" James hesitated. "I know, sir, but perception moves faster than truth." Outside, the city carried on, cars gliding down wet streets, pedestrians scrolling through headlines. But inside, the penthouse air turned heavy, suffocating. Adrian stared at the glowing tablet as though it were something radioactive. "Get my PR team," he said finally. "We'll fix this." But even as he said the words, he knew fixing wasn't the same as believing. Somewhere across town, in a small apartment above the bakery where she used to buy discounted bread, Lena sat at her kitchen table, her phone buzzing nonstop. She opened one message, then another, her hands trembling, each one worse than the last. Screenshots of the article, comments, accusations. The same city that had applauded her 12 hours ago now whispered her name like a scandal. She pressed her palms to her face, tears sliding silently down her wrists. From the corner of the table, her phone vibrated again. This time, it was from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in your place." Lena dropped the phone as if it burned her. Outside, rain began to fall again, cold, steady, endless. And far above the city, in a hallway lined with glass, Camille Hart and Dr. Sienna Blake watched the story spread across their screens, faces lit by the soft glow of destruction they had created. Camille whispered, "Every empire protects itself." Sienna said nothing. She just watched the headline reload, and for the first time, wondered which empire she had just helped burn. The storm didn't come with thunder, it came with headlines. By sunrise, the city was already whispering. By noon, it was shouting. Every screen, every news feed, every business blog in Seattle carried the same story. Billionaire's caregiver accused of misusing charity funds. The same picture repeated again and again, Lena's uncertain smile at the gala, champagne lights behind her, eyes full of the kind of hope the world loves to break. Adrian Cole sat at his kitchen counter, phone buzzing non-stop. The tablet lay open beside his untouched coffee, its glow cold and merciless. "Sir, that's the fourth outlet today," said James, pacing with a phone pressed to his ear. Channel 7, Seattle Business Review, The Tribune, they all picked it up. "Who's the source?" Adrian asked, voice sharp but tired. "They won't say, just an insider close to the Cole Foundation." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Find out who it is, and shut it down." "I'm trying," James said, "but every time we issue a statement, another rumor pops up. It's spreading faster than we can manage." "Then tell them it's false," Adrian snapped. "Tell them—" James hesitated. "Sir, with respect, we don't have proof yet. Not of innocence or guilt. Finance is still auditing the event accounts. We need time." Adrian looked up slowly. "You're telling me to wait?" "Yes, sir." He leaned back in his chair, the weight of the words sinking in. "And what am I supposed to do in the meantime? Watch her reputation burn?" James sighed. "If you say something now, and the numbers don't align perfectly, the press will turn on both of you. Sometimes defending too soon looks like hiding something." Adrian's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes waiting costs everything." In another room, just beyond the half-open door, Lena stood frozen. She hadn't meant to overhear. She had walked in quietly, hoping to bring Evelyn's medication chart for Adrian to sign, but the words hit her before she could retreat. If there's even a chance she made a mistake, I need all the facts before I defend her. That one sentence, logical, reasonable, professional, pierced her like a blade. She stayed there, heart pounding, breath shaking. It wasn't just doubt, it was déjà vu, because once, long ago, someone else had said the same thing. We can't take her back until we know the full story. And that's how a 15-year-old Lena had learned that being good wasn't enough. When Adrian finally turned around, she was standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red but dry, her posture calm in a way that only pain could make it. "Lena," he began, startled. I heard you," she said quietly. He froze. "What exactly did you hear?" "Enough," she whispered. "Enough to know that you don't believe me." "That's not true," he said quickly. "I just need to check the data first," she finished for him, her voice trembling. "Need to verify the evidence before you decide if I'm lying." Adrian's throat closed. "It's not that simple." "It never is," she said. "Not when it's about people like me." He took a step forward, but she stepped back. "Lena, please. You know I would never think—" "Stop," she said. "Please just stop trying to fix it with words." He went still. Her hands fidgeted with the strap of her bag. "Do you know what hurts the most?" Adrian said nothing. "It's not the article. It's not the comments or the pictures." She looked up, eyes shimmering. "It's hearing the only person I thought would instantly stand by me say he needs more time." Her words landed like glass breaking on marble. He reached out desperate. "Lena, don't walk away. We'll find who did this. We'll prove—" You'll prove, she corrected softly, because I'm done trying. She walked past him toward the hallway, moving with quiet purpose. The sound of a zipper echoed, small, final. Where are you going? He asked, voice cracking. Home, she said simply, or whatever version of it I can still afford. You don't have to leave. Yes, I do. Please, he said, stepping closer. Don't make decisions when you're hurt. She turned then, her expression heartbreakingly gentle. Adrian, my entire life has been people making decisions for me. This one's mine. He tried to speak, but the words refused to come. Lena walked toward the elevator, the strap of her small canvas backpack cutting across her shoulder. She paused at the door, then looked back once more. Not at the man she loved, but at the place that had almost felt like home. Tell Mrs. Evelyn, she started, then stopped. Actually, no. Don't tell her anything yet. I'll call her myself. Adrian took a step forward. At least let me drive you. She shook her head. I've been walking away alone my whole life. I can manage one more time. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two people separated not by distance, but by hesitation. Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. You once told me that truth doesn't need a defense, but the truth is, Adrian, when people like me get accused, silence is a verdict. She pressed the elevator button. The doors slid open with a soft chime. Goodbye, she said. Take care of yourself. Lena, she stepped inside before he could finish. The doors closed, and just like that, she was gone. The penthouse felt impossibly large after she left. The air itself seemed to echo. Adrian stood there for several seconds, staring at the empty elevator doors, until his knees finally gave way and he sank onto the couch. The silence was suffocating, the kind of silence that reminded him how loud laughter used to be. Evelyn's laughter, Lena's off-key humming, the clatter of dishes, the smell of chamomile tea. Now, nothing. The ticking clock on the wall sounded like a heartbeat fading away. James entered quietly, stopped when he saw Adrian sitting there, and realized nothing he could say would help. He left without a word, closing the door softly behind him. Night came early that day, or maybe it just felt darker. Adrian wandered through the penthouse like a ghost, from the kitchen where she used to stand to the balcony where they'd first kissed. He stared out at the city below, at the 1,000 glittering windows, and wondered how a man could own so much glass and still be surrounded by emptiness. Somewhere in the streets below, maybe Lena was walking beneath the rain again, head high despite the storm. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole wished he were poor, because then maybe he'd know how to hold on to something that couldn't be bought. He whispered her name once, softly into the night. Lena? The wind took it, and the silence that followed was the cruelest sound he had ever heard. The week that followed was sleepless. Adrian Cole turned his penthouse into an investigation room. The marble counters were buried under printouts, transaction logs, and time-stamped receipts. The city skyline outside blurred into endless rain, but he didn't see it anymore. He saw only her face. The moment she left, eyes full of quiet disbelief. Play that again, he said. James sighed. That's the 12th time. Play it again. The speakers crackled, and Sienna's recorded voice filled the room. He's brilliant, but naive. He needs someone equal, not a sentimental girl from the docks. Adrian's jaw tightened. The recording had come from one of Sienna's junior staff, too disgusted to keep silent. Combined with the altered receipts James uncovered, fake reimbursements, staged transfers, it was undeniable. Camille and Sienna had set Lena up, and he had let them. He rubbed his temples, voice raw. How long have they been planning this? Since the gala, James replied. The invoices were edited 2 days later. They even used the foundation's own media team to leak the story. Adrian closed his eyes, breathing through the storm inside him. We're going to fix this, not quietly, not with PR. James looked up. Then how? Adrian stood, resolve sharpening. With truth, in public, where she was humiliated, that's where she'll be vindicated. 3 days later, a modest press release went out. Cole Foundation to hold community address at Harbor House Shelter. All media welcome. No luxury hotel, no velvet ropes. Just the cracked courtyard by the docks, the same ground where Lena once handed out hot dogs and laughter. When the press vans arrived, they looked confused. Reporters stepped carefully over uneven concrete, expecting podiums and PR handlers. Instead, they found folding chairs, homemade banners drawn by children, and a sound system borrowed from the local church. At the far end, under strings of light bulbs, Adrian stood waiting in a simple gray suit. No tie, no bodyguards, just James beside him, holding a folder thick with evidence. Margaret, the matron of Harbor House, approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "They're all here, even the little ones." Adrian nodded. "Good. And Lena?" "She said no," Margaret sighed. "But then I told her the kids needed her. She'll come." 10 minutes later, she did. Lena stepped into the courtyard hesitantly, the same backpack slung across her shoulder. The children saw her first. "Miss Lena!" they shouted, running up to hug her legs. "You're on TV!" She smiled weakly, stroking their hair. "Not this time, sweethearts." Her eyes lifted and met Adrian's. The crowd faded, the noise dimmed. He looked exhausted, not in the way money could fix, but in the way regret carved deep into a person's face. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I came for them," she replied. "I know." The reporter settled. Cameras clicked. Adrian stepped forward to the makeshift microphone. "Thank you for being here," he began, voice steady but stripped of all pretense. "We're standing in Harbor House, not because it's convenient, but because it's the only place this story makes sense." He paused, scanning the crowd of press, donors, and children fidgeting at the front. Last week, false allegations were spread about this center and about a woman named Lena Reyes. He glanced at her. She flinched slightly at hearing her name aloud. "The claims were wrong," he continued, "and I was wrong for hesitating when the world turned against her." A murmur rippled through the journalists. Adrian nodded toward James, who stepped forward and handed him the folder. He opened it, his voice growing firmer. "These are the original invoices, the transfers, the messages sent to the media under the alias Civic Source, all traced back to two individuals within our circle, Camille Hart and Dr. Sienna Blake." Camera shutters exploded in bursts. Reporters leaned forward. He went on, every word deliberate. "They fabricated financial discrepancies, edited receipts, and leaked those false documents to discredit a woman they considered unworthy of standing beside me." Gasps spread across the crowd. James projected the screenshots on a small screen behind them. Email chains, voice recordings, time stamps. It was undeniable. Sienna's cold words echoed once more. "He needs someone equal, not a sentimental girl from the docks." Lena looked down, blinking hard. She wasn't used to public revenge, only private pain. Adrian continued, voice breaking just slightly. "They thought wealth decides worth. That kindness is a weakness to be exploited, and I let that belief live too long in me." The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. He turned then, facing her directly. "Lena," he said, dropping the microphone from the stand and walking toward her. "I've built towers, companies, a name, but none of it means anything if I can't build trust." She tried to look away, but he stopped a few feet from her, his voice trembling with something rare, humility. "I failed you," he said simply. "When the world accused you, I should have stood in front of you. Instead, I stood behind excuses. I said I needed facts when all I needed was faith." A murmur spread through the crowd. Even the cameras paused. Adrian took another step closer. "You were right. Silence is a verdict, and I was guilty of giving it." Lena shook her head, tears welling. "Adrian, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." He reached into his pocket, but not for a diamond. Instead, he pulled out the small folded note she once practiced her speech on, the one that read, "Hope is not a luxury." He unfolded it slowly, the paper trembling in his hand. "This," he said, holding it up, "was yours, and I want to spend the rest of my life protecting what it means." The crowd hushed, sensing something extraordinary. Adrian went down on one knee, right there, on the cracked cement of Harbor House, beneath tangled wires and swaying bulbs. The children gasped, then squealed. "He's kneeling! Miss Lena, he's kneeling!" Lena froze, hands over her mouth. "I don't have a ring," Adrian said softly. "I don't have a perfect setting, but I have the truth, and I have love. If you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life standing between you and every storm that ever dares to touch you." Her breath caught. Adrian. He looked up, eyes glimmering with something she'd never seen in him before. Vulnerability. Will you marry me? The courtyard erupted, reporters clicking furiously, children cheering, Margaret crying into her apron. Lena stood frozen, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then she nodded, just once. Yes, she whispered, voice breaking. But only if you promise not to check the data first. Laughter and applause thundered through the courtyard. Adrian stood, pulling her into his arms. For the first time, the story didn't belong to the press, or the donors, or the headlines. It belonged to two people who had finally learned that truth wasn't just spoken, it was lived. As the lights flickered above them, Evelyn's voice called from the edge of the crowd, wry and proud. About time. The children whooped, blowing cheap party horns. Cameras flashed like fireworks. And in the middle of it all, on a cracked patch of cement that had once been forgotten by the world, two lives finally came together. Not as billionaire and caregiver, but as equals. The Harbor House courtyard had never looked like this before. The cracked concrete was covered with wildflowers and jam jars. Strings of yellow lights hung between trees like borrowed constellations. The smell of sea salt mingled with vanilla frosting from a homemade cake someone had left on a folding table. It wasn't a ballroom, it wasn't luxury. It was real. And that made it perfect. Adrian Cole stood by the archway of ivy and fairy lights, hands folded nervously. The billionaire who once hosted board meetings in glass towers now waited for his bride in a second-hand suit, navy blue, slightly wrinkled, far too human. James, serving as the officiant, flipped through a wrinkled stack of notes. You sure you don't want to move this to a hotel, sir? I hear the Four Seasons has... Adrian cut him off, smiling. We're already at the only five-star place that matters. James chuckled. The rating's based on number of laughing children, not Michelin stars, I assume. Exactly. In the front row, Evelyn Cole sat wrapped in a soft cream cardigan, her hair pinned neatly, her eyes glistening behind round spectacles. The wheelchair beneath her was decorated with paper ribbons, courtesy of the kids, of course. She dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. He's finally doing something intelligent with that brain of his. Beside her, little Mateo from Harbor House nodded solemnly. He looks nervous. Evelyn smiled. That means he's ready. Then the music began. An old violin, slightly out of tune but full of soul. The children from Harbor House appeared first, marching down the aisle in chaotic formation. Each carried something different. One with daisies, another with dandelions, a third with a bunch of tiny shells tied together with twine. The youngest tripped over her shoelace halfway down, and everyone laughed. Then came Lena. She wasn't wearing couture. Her dress was white cotton with hand-stitched lace, the kind that moved softly with the wind. A thin ribbon tied her hair back, and she carried no bouquet. Just one small sprig of lavender Evelyn had tucked into her hand moments before. When Adrian saw her, his breath caught. Not because of glamour, but because she looked exactly like everything he'd been searching for. Simplicity, honesty, warmth. She reached the archway and smiled nervously. You're overdressed, she teased. And you're late, he whispered back. I was fixing a child's shoelace. He grinned. Still saving the world, I see. Old habits die hard. James cleared his throat dramatically. Ladies, gentlemen, and children who are already eating cake before the ceremony begins. A collective giggle ran through the crowd. We gather here, James continued, not in a palace or cathedral, but in a place that built hope one cracked wall at a time. Because that's what marriage is, not perfection, but repair. Lena looked up at Adrian, her eyes soft. He squeezed her hand. James turned to Adrian. Do you, Adrian Cole, promise to... A small voice shouted from the crowd. Hurry up! Kiss her already! Laughter erupted, even from Evelyn, who nearly dropped her handkerchief. James sighed theatrically. Apparently our witnesses are impatient, but first, vows. Adrian took a deep breath. Lena, he began, his voice shaking just slightly. The day you walked into my life, I thought I was helping you. I thought I was the savior in the story. But you were saving me. Lena blinked hard. He continued. I promise to believe you even when the whole city tells me not to. I promise to listen first, defend faster, and doubt slower. I promise to turn every dollar I have into something that feels like home, for you and for every child you ever call yours." Evelyn clapped softly. The kids joined in, clapping out of rhythm but with absolute sincerity. Then Lena smiled, wiping her eyes. "That's a lot to live up to, Mr. Cole." "Mrs. Cole," he corrected gently. "Not yet," she teased. "My turn." She took a deep breath, her words simple but radiant. "I promise to love you even when you forget how to rest. I promise to remind you that happiness doesn't have to be flawless. Sometimes it burns, sometimes it spills, and sometimes it's late for dinner." The crowd chuckled. "I promise," she added with a grin, "to burn at least one meal a week so you never forget that perfect isn't what we're aiming for." Adrian laughed through tears. "That's the most honest vow I've ever heard." James raised his hands. "Well, with vows like that, I officially declare you—" Before he could finish, the same small voice from earlier screamed again. "Hurry up and kiss!" The whole crowd broke into laughter. Adrian looked at Lena. "Permission?" She smirked. Granted, he kissed her. Not for the cameras, not for the spectacle, but for the promise. The children cheered so loudly that seagulls flew off the nearby rooftops. Evelyn clapped through tears. James dropped his notes and laughed until he couldn't breathe. And just like that, beneath tangled string lights and mismatched chairs, they became husband and wife. As dusk settled, the celebration turned into a patchwork of laughter and music. Someone connected an old speaker to a phone and played pop songs from 20 years ago. The children danced barefoot on the grass. Margaret carried a tray of lemonade. Evelyn sat near the garden edge, watching them. Her eyes followed Adrian and Lena as they moved among the guests, laughing, hugging, living. "See, George," she whispered to the empty chair beside her, the one reserved for her late husband. "He finally found what we always hoped for him. Not wealth, not legacy, just love that makes him kinder." The night air carried her words away. Later, when most guests had gone, Adrian and Lena stood together under the string lights. He had taken off his jacket. She had kicked off her shoes. "You realize," he said, "we're technically spending our honeymoon surrounded by 12 kids and a broken karaoke machine." She laughed. "Perfect, isn't it?" He nodded. "It is." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You really did it, Adrian. You turned your empire into a home." He looked around. The flickering lights, the laughter in the distance, the smell of grilled food, and smiled. "No," he said softly. "You did." For a long moment, they stood in silence, watching the children chase fireflies across the garden. Lena whispered, "You know what the kids said earlier? They said this place feels bigger tonight." "It's not the place," Adrian murmured. "It's the love inside it." She smiled. "That's home then." "Exactly," he said. "Home isn't a place, it's a promise.